hope you'll indulge me. As a trial attorney, I have trouble saying anything without standing up and drawing a picture about it.
Understand. Brian, if you mind kicking it off, and again, just give us your name and, again, association for the record, please.
Of course. My name is Brian McGivern. I'm an attorney for the Texas Civil Rights Project. I understand today y'all are making a close examination of dollars and cents, and I hope to offer a slightly broader perspective that I think will help inform those decisions. That broader perspective has two components, bad news and good news. I brought good news, don't worry. Bad news. The Texas prison system, spent the final 20 years of the 20th century under federal supervision, in part because of grossly inadequate medical care. It has improved, but we are on that path again. That is the bad news. I'm going to elaborate on it in a moment. The good news is that there's a simple solution for this body to approach. No muss, no fuss, not an additional dime in the budget, and it was actually recommended by the Legislative Budget Board in January 2013. But first, context. Ruiz v. Estelle is the style of the class action litigation that reformed the Texas prison system. Hearings began in the 70s, and Judge William Justice issued his first written memorandum opinion in 1980. It was over 100 pages long, single-spaced, documenting a number of problems that had been discovered with over 160 days of testimony. That opinion brought the entire prison system under federal supervision. For 9 years of this 21 years, it was under the supervision of a special master. It's essentially in receivership. It did not leave that supervision until 2001. Now, an important year within that time frame is 1999. That was the time that the most current set of findings of fact were issued by the court, which were later reaffirmed in 2001. And at the time, Judge Justice reviewed the state of medical care as it was being provided in 1999. And what he found was that it was grossly medically negligent on a number of levels, many of which remain the same today. First is, for instance, over-reliance on non-physicians, asking people to do things that were beyond their expertise. Still pervasive. I can tell you anecdotally and from some of the testimony here today. Problems with evaluation, identifying illnesses in people to begin with. Delay. Today in the medical system, we have people who die from asthma attacks. Just outrageous. Anywhere in the free world, if you dialed 911, you'd be fine. We have people who can fall and break their arm and not be seriously reviewed, not receive an x-ray, not get a splint for a month. That is a true story. We have people with mental health conditions that even when diagnosed frequently are not adequately medicated. Okay? These are things that existed in 1999. They continue to exist today. Really shouldn't be a surprise. There was a vaunted Pew study that congratulated Texas, actually, saying that our medical costs had not increased with our aging population like in most states, which noted that spending had not increased from 2001 to 2008 appreciably per inmate. What they failed to overlook was the contrast between goals and objectives and outcomes, which was something that Judge Justice noted in his 1999 opinion, that officials from UTMB and similar sources had created a great set of policies, which in many instances are laudable, and in many instances are not carried out, in part because of inadequate resources. And yet, supervision under Ruiz v. Estelle ceased. Why is that? Well, because for an Eighth Amendment claim, you need two things. One, you need to show that medical care is bad, which was established in 1999. And you also have to show knowledge, that there's this knowledge of system-wide inadequacies. And that he found that at that time, there was not a system-wide knowledge of those inadequacies. The only thing missing was notice, an awareness at the system-wide level that there were problems. I think we have that today, if for no other reason that a judge in the longest and broadest in scope civil rights case in history, the Ruiz v. Estelle case, made those factual findings. Presumably the leadership of these organizations read his opinion. But it's been well documented in many years since then also. And his approach is not the approach of a wild-eyed liberal judge. It's an approach that was recently reaffirmed by the Supreme Court in 2011, Brown v. Plata, the decision in which they affirmed the decision of a 3-judge tribunal ordering California to release more than a quarter of its prison inmates, in large part because of, again, gross inadequacies in medical care and mental health care. Bear in mind that when the Supreme Court made this decision, California was spending $28.55 per inmate per day on these medical care services. Today, we are spending $9.26, or excuse me, in 2013, per inmate per day on medical care, less than a third. And actually, interestingly, at the time, in 2011, my organization released a report. At the time, the spending was $9.88 per inmate. It's gone down since 2011. Now, some people may try to attribute this to innovation, that we're just better than other states, particularly in terms of telemedicine, which isn't used everywhere, though incidentally it is used in California. And I would point out the fact that the people upon whom we are supposing are creating these innovations, UTMB, for instance, the same organization that a couple of years ago was doing its darndest to get out of this contractual relationship because in every budget cycle it was $50 to $60 million in the red. I'm not an expert, but that doesn't strike me as a forum for real innovation. I think it's just underspending, which is part of a larger trend in the prison system. In 1988, we were spending, on average, $12,500 a year per inmate for incarceration. Now, there's been inflation since 1998. At an inflation rate, $12,500 would be about $25,000 today, give or take. Are we spending $25,000 per day per inmate in our incarceration system? No, we're spending about $16,000. I'll grant you maybe a little bit more than that, but not 1,000 more, maybe $16,500 per inmate per day. And admittedly, this does not represent an overall decrease in spending. In the 1980s, we were spending about 4% of our total budget on just incarceration, just keeping people behind bars. Today, it's about 8%. We're spending a lot more than we were in the late 80s, but we're just not keeping up with the rate of incarceration. Since 1970, we've had this progressive trend in which the prison population has increased over 960%. Vastly greater than the rate of population increase, which has only doubled. It doesn't track crime rates either, even when you take into account that crime rates are pegged at the number of crimes that are created by statute. It's an issue that ultimately the cause of that level of incarceration resides in legislation. The last 10 years, every session, we've created about 40 new felonies, which doesn't take into account increased punishments for existing felonies, decreased opportunities for parole for existing felonies, which is the reason why incarceration has increased so greatly. Now, the solution here, there's precedent for the solution I'm going to offer. That's the end of the bad news. Now we're going on to the good news.
Brian, you're going to have to get us there.
Okay.
Are you going to get cut off? You're going to have to get us there a little sooner.
This will be quick, I promise. Okay. There's precedent for this solution. In 2007, the legislature was looking at the potential to have to dramatically increase spending for building of facilities because the prison population was increasing and we were going to exceed capacity. What was the solution? Well, the solution took into account the fact that 70,000 people leave prison every year. That's nearly half the people that go in. 70,000 leave. We worked really hard to keep it at a constant level. And with very modest tinkering at the front end, population can decrease pretty quickly. And that leads to not just decreased strain on our facilities, which is what that was designed to accomplish, but also massive savings. 1,000 of this 70,000 number equals $16 million. Now bear in mind the 70,000.
Brian, I got that. You got it.
Okay. Half the people going in are for 2 years or less, only 5, 6 for crimes not against the person.
Right.
I'll skip right to the solution. January 2011, the Legislative Budget Board advised the legislature to reconvene a sentencing commission like we had in 1993, which a couple dozen states have had within this millennium, because essentially we don't know what we're getting for our investment. I mean, you can't identify a single entity in the private sector that has not examined the returns that it's receiving on its investments. We don't have, and the LBB has said there's no comprehensive study to determine whether or not we're accomplishing what we hope to accomplish with what we're spending on criminal justice. Essentially what we need to do is we need to have a sentencing commission to examine just the state of the penal code today, how it's been updated and modified incrementally by bills that have slipped through every session for the last 20-odd years, to see, if it makes sense to do what we did in 2007, increase some opportunities for treatment, increase some opportunities for diversion, whether it might make sense to parole people who are had first-time convictions for property crimes rather than put them into prison for a year or two. That's the broader perspective I hope to offer. I appreciate the indulgence, your patience.
Thank you for your overview. Members, any questions for Brian? Thank you, Brian, for your testimony. Jennifer.